Welcome to What's Going On, the weekly podcast and videocast of First United Methodist Church in Yankton, South Dakota. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of What's Going On. I'm Pastor Katie Rickey here at First United Methodist Church in Yankton, South Dakota, and I'm so glad you could join me for this episode. This episode is coming to you in that week between Christmas and New Year's. Hopefully you all were able to celebrate Christmas in one way or another, whether you had a nice quiet Christmas at home or you got to be with family and friends and loved ones. I hope that it was a special time. It was really special to be able to have Christmas Eve services in person this year after last year, and knowing that many of you joined us online as well and had that option. But it just was a really wonderful, special services, and really grateful to have been a part of those. And also for those of you who came to worship on Sunday the 26th as well. I mean, if you went to all of those services, you definitely had your fair share of church this week, but hopefully it was a blessing to you as it was for me. Looking ahead, I was thinking about, what to talk about as we kind of finish off this year and look to the next year. And I was looking at the liturgy, or the lectionary, I should say, the lectionary for the new year and for what's kind of coming up. We have worship on January 2nd, where we're going to be celebrating Epiphany. Epiphany is when we celebrate the wise men coming to bring gifts to the Christ child and kind of the events that they set in motion. And one of the things we started last year is doing star words on our Epiphany Sunday. And so that will be this coming Sunday, January 2nd. When you come to worship, one of the things you will receive is a star with a word on it. And basically, that word is for you to kind of make the meaning you will out of it. For many, it becomes sort of an intention word for the year. It becomes maybe a bit of a challenge or a mystery to see how God might use that word for you this year. It might become an answer to prayer or a prompt for prayer, a prompt for change, or any number of things. Sometimes words really speak to people, and sometimes maybe not so much in a certain year. But I think it is an interesting way for us to have an avenue where we're paying attention to God. I think that's the big piece of it, is not that God has to use these words to speak to us, but if we say that we're paying attention, that God might use that as a way to speak to us, to guide us, and to encourage us in the year to come. And so I'm really looking forward to that on January 2nd. But there are other lectionary readings for this week and for New Year's. And one of them is one of my go-to passages of Scripture. It's something that I come back to time and time again. I feel like it's probably one of the most convicting passages of Scripture as a Christian who's trying to follow the teachings and examples of Christ, how to relate my faith to how I live in the world. And so I'm going to share the passage with you and then talk a little bit about one of the ways that we try to live that out. So the passage comes from the Gospel of Matthew chapter 25, and it begins with verse 31 and it goes through verse 45. And I'm reading out of the NRSV, New Revised Standard Version. That's the Bible that I use when we have worship. It's one of the many versions of the Bible that I will grab and read. And if that's ever something that you have questions about, if you're at home and you don't have a Bible yet and you'd like to get one, and you have questions about maybe which Bible would be best for you, that would be something that I would love to visit with you about, and for us to help find the right Bible for you. Like I said, I have many, kind of some for different purposes, but the NRSV I've found has been one that I really like for our worship together. I feel like it's accessible. I feel like it's pretty faithful in the way that it has been chosen to be translated. I made that sound like the Bible had a choice. In the way that the editors chose to translate things. just know that not every Bible is created equally, and they each have their own reasons for existing. Again, I'm making the Bible sound anthropomorphic. I'm not. But there was reasons for creating each of the Bibles that exist. Maybe that's the better way. Either that, or I'm just really on a kick today where this Bible is alive. Probably not. All right. So Matthew chapter 25. And this is Jesus. He's teaching. And this is what he says. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, when Jesus is talking about the Son of Man, one, it's a reference to an Old Testament prophet out of Daniel, but also he's really talking about himself. That's his favorite way to refer to himself. So it would be like if I were teaching about something and I wanted to teach about something that I would be doing, I might say daughter of Lester Rowan. That's really on the nose, but it's his way of referring to himself. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep at his right hand and the goats at his left. So I didn't know this, but apparently is a pretty common thing that your sheep and your goats would be in the same field together, mingling together, and he's using this imagery, saying that, kind of the end of times, at the judgment time, everyone is coming before judgment, and that God is going to be sorting out the sheep and the goats. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, "Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you?" So they've done all these things, but they've never done it with the sense that they were doing it for Jesus in particular. They don't remember ever encountering Jesus specifically. Or in this case. And then it says, "And the king will answer them, 'Truly I tell you, just as you did it for one of the least of these members of my family, you did it to me.'" So he's saying what you did for others, what you did for those who were in need, you did directly for me. It's pretty good news there. And then he goes on. Then he will say to those at his left hand, "You that are accursed, depart from me into this eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not give me clothing. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they will also answer, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not take care of you?" Then he will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." And those will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. It's a pretty powerful passage, and I know I've referenced it and talked about it before. Like I said, it's one of my favorites. It's one that really is a guide in my own life, and something that I struggle with from time to time, and feeling like if I can't, how do I discern when you need to drop everything and help someone, or kind of that question of enabling or things like that, creating a dependence or things like that. But what really speaks to me about this passage is the connection between our faith in God and our behavior in the world, and how they are not just related, but they're like intimately connected. And I know I've talked about that before, but really, like, we cannot say we love God if we are not caring for the least of these, if we are not doing what we can to help those in need, because because how we treat other people is how we treat God. And you might say, well, obviously they're not God, and if it was really God, I would behave differently. Well, that's what the people in the passage are saying. Like, when did we see? If we saw you, we would have done that, but it wasn't you. And God says, no, those people were me, and you denied me. You denied them help. You denied them love and compassion. You denied those things to me. And so that's kind of just I think a challenge for us as Christians and as the church, always to be living into that. How can we be meeting the needs of those around us? How can we make sure that we are feeding the hungry and clothing the naked and visiting the sick and in prison, and making sure that people who are ill are being taken care of. And I think that's something that's been really convicting to me. And as we move forward into 2022, something I really want to focus on as a church, to kind of make it a year, and hopefully more than a year, but really to kind of designate this year as a year of reaching out, a year of mission, a year of meeting the needs of others. And I think we've got a really strong start to it, and I'm really excited about the things that we're doing. This church clearly has a passion for these kinds of things. I just want to keep building on that. And so obviously one of the things that we are doing is serving the banquet this week on Thursday, December 30th. So we have people who've been dropping off their food and donations. I mean, literally people who've been dropping off clothing donations. They're clothing the naked. They're feeding the hungry. They're giving the thirsty what they need. And so doing that kind of ministry, I think is really important. And if that's something that you've never experienced or never done before, I would encourage you to make sure that when we do have those opportunities for you to sign up and make that a priority, because it is profound in serving how we find God's presence and God in the midst of that. And so that's one way this week that we're doing that. Another that I'm really excited about is this Loads of Love laundry mission. So a little background. The Loads of Love laundry mission actually began at Trinity Lutheran Church, just down the street, the Burger King Church, we affectionately like to call it. They saw a need here in Yankton for a laundry ministry, something that they had seen being done in Sioux Falls, I believe. And it's kind of one of those things that you don't think about how much the cost of laundry can add up. And if you're someone that has very few clothes, and you're trying to apply for jobs and your clothes are dirty, or you're trying to keep your kids healthy and your clothes, those things matter. And so they realized that there was a need here in Yankton for that, and they began Laundry with TLC, and we had been promoting that and happy to do so. And then the pastor of that church realized that there was a much greater need than what they could meet as a church. And so they started inviting other churches into it. The UCC church started this fall, but they didn't call it Laundry with TLC because TLC stands for Trinity Lutheran Church. So they rebranded it Loads of Love. And they were excited to be a part of it, but realized pretty quickly that they would not be able to handle a monthly commitment to hosting the laundry mission. And so they reached out to us to say, would you partner with us? And we'll go every other month and provide that mission. And so that's what we did, and that's how we got involved with it, is that there was a need. And as churches began to meet that need, they began to see how big it really was. And this is one of the ways that we can, again, help the least of these, help people who are really struggling, where, having 3 loads of laundry paid for can make the difference between having food on the table or getting your bills in or different things like that. And so I'm excited for this new ministry that we're going to be a part of. We're going to do that 6 times this year. And again, one of the things I love about it is that it is a ministry that allows us to create relationships, just like serving at the banquet. Unlike times where we get to just write checks or, wrap presents or, do a donation in our offering plate, these are opportunities for us to really get to meet people, to really hear their stories, to really understand their situation and how they got there, and hopefully to have some compassion and motivation to move and change things so that things are more just in our world. I think part of our calling as Christians is to not turn a blind eye to the problems that are in our community and that are in our world, but to deal with them with eyes wide open, with compassion, not to be taken advantage of, but to really try to, one, meet a need where it is, but then two, to ask the questions of why does this need exist? Bishop Desmond Tutu, who recently passed away the day after Christmas. He was a bishop in the Anglican Church of South Africa and big in the getting rid of apartheid, and just an incredible man of faith. One of the quotes that's been circulating since his death is one that I've used. I didn't even realize I was quoting him. But it said, at some point we have to do more than just fish bodies out of the water. We have to go upstream and see why they're in the water in the first place and stop that process, which is a pretty graphic image, but it really does make sense that if all we're ever doing is trying to just react to what the situation is rather than being proactive and trying to help change things for people, I think we're only doing part of the work that God has called us to do. And so having missions that allow us to really take a step into people's lives and see what is going on and to see how they got there and to see that really none of us are that far away from being in that situation, that a person's luck, a person's situation can change very quickly. That hopefully that motivates us to continue to do the work of the kingdom, which is not only works of mercy, feeding people a meal, but works of justice, and how do we help it so we have less and less people who are in need of those kind of services. Obviously for Christmas we did our mission offering for Loganov Alive, and about half of the money that we have donated to Loganov, we kind of did it in two chunks because we have a parish care and outreach committee at the church, which includes our missions team, and they have a budget, and part of their budget goes to giving to other organizations and missions that are doing the work of Christ. We as a church cannot meet every need. We as a church cannot replicate every ministry that's in the world, so sometimes what we choose to do is partner with people who are already doing that work and doing it much better than we could. And this is one of those instances where we are partnering with Loganov Alive to help meet the needs of people in Haiti, but not only that, but to help create an infrastructure and to create opportunities for people to succeed. And so within our missions budget, we had some extra funding. And so they chose to give some of that funding to the Corps special giving that we did in December to help those who lost property, lost stuff all in the tornadoes and severe weather in the central and southern United States. And part of it went to Loganov Alive. That money that was sent went to feeding the elderly. And there'll be some photos and things for you to see in worship about that. But again, it's just another way for us to be mindful of the need around us and the way in which God is calling us. We can't meet every need, but we can meet some needs. We might not be able to change the whole world, but we can change the world for some people. And I think that's important that we do that. One of the other ways this year that we really, I think, lived into this Matthew 25 teaching was through Habitat for Humanity, when we helped to build a house where we really, again became the hands and feet of Christ and physically showed up and put nails into walls and worked to create a shelter and a home for a family. These are all beautiful, wonderful ways that we can follow the teachings of Jesus, and that we can be disciples of Christ. It's living into this that I think really can make all the difference. And so this year, I challenge you that if you've not been part of any of our mission opportunities, if you've not lent yourself to being a volunteer or to contributing to our mission projects, or maybe there's something that's near and dear to your heart that we're not doing that maybe you think we should be. This is the year that I want us to kind of really lean into that side of our discipleship, the service side of our discipleship, that our church doesn't exist for itself. Our church doesn't exist so that someday, that we just keep on keeping on, but our church exists to extend the kingdom of God. And I think a big part of how we do that is how we reach out and how we meet needs and how we work to change the world. Our United Methodist statement says that we are here, mission statement says that we are here to grow disciples of Jesus Christ and equip them for ministry in the world. That's our church's statement. Our broader United Methodist mission statement is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. And I think that's the piece that I think we need to focus on, is as we move forward as a church, is our main focus going to be inward and pleasing ourselves, or is our main focus going to be outward, meeting the needs of others, changing their lives, transforming our community and our world, and making an impact that lasts beyond us? I want to be a church that we are a light on a hill, that people can come and see us and find hope and find new life and find opportunity and find love and acceptance, that this church would stand for something better. Not, so that when people see our giant cross and flame on the side of our building lit up at night, that it's a beacon for them. A beacon to find their way home, but a beacon also of finding their way to Christ. And so that's kind of my thoughts as we enter into the new year. The vision that I have and something that I want to keep working toward is more and more mission, more and more outreach opportunities, more and more ways where we are thinking about the people who have yet to come and the people who come who are in need. One of the small changes that we're making, and I maybe you've noticed it, but it's something that's been very intentional, is that I want to make our lobby area a real mission focus, so that when people come into our church and when you come into our church, that you see what we're about. You see where our heart is. You see the things that we are doing to try to live out our faith. And so you're going to always be struck by whatever missions we are working on at that time. One of the things that I loved to see is during December, we had all of those angel tree presents right out before you even could get to the stairs. And I think there was something really moving about that it gave us the sense, and it gave people the message that we are a church that cares about others, that we are a church that steps up to meet people's needs, that we are a church that is thinking not just of ourselves, but people not in our church or in our community who we have been blessed to bless. And then right next to that, we had the Banquet sign up, and then starting to have all of those sign up sheets, but also the donations coming in for that. It was like, this church is really doing stuff. And then now we added to that table the Loads of Love ministry, and we have the laundry baskets out, and that's going to be something that you're going to see kind of year round. But just know that that's something we're doing intentionally. That's the message that we want people to have, is that this is a church that's going to do something. It's a church where you're going to be asked to serve, where you're going to be given the opportunity to make a difference in the community and ultimately in our world. That's something near and dear to our hearts. That's what we care about. And that's what we do. I think the other thing you're going to see is a lot of things where we're going to put children and youth front and center because they also are leading the way. We have the most amazing confirmation group this year, and they just got their assignment for their confirmation projects that are based on our membership vows, and I cannot wait for you to see what they are up to. Again, it's one of those opportunities where the youth will lead the way, and they're going to teach us about faith and what they are doing, and so I'm very excited about that. But I just want to be kind of clear about that's part of who we are. That's part of our heritage as United Methodists, but most importantly, that's part of our heritage as disciples of Jesus. This is what he taught us to do. And if we're not doing those things, I think the consequences are that we're not being the church that we are called to be. When you see mission opportunities out there, I want you to take advantage of them. Or if you have ideas for ways that we can meet needs in the community that are not being met, I'd love to hear from you. Another person that would be great to visit with will be Julie Moderager, who is now becoming the staff person overseeing our missions and outreach ministries. And so if you'd like to get involved, please visit with me or visit with Julie because there's a lot of opportunity, a lot that we can do, and even more when we do it together. So, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I hope to see you soon. God bless. Thank you for joining us on this episode of What's Going On, a video and audio podcast of First United Methodist Church in Yankton, South Dakota. We'd love to have you join us for worship on Sundays, and we have two options available. 9 a.m. is our contemporary service, and 10:30 a.m. is our traditional service. You can find those online as well at our website, www.firstumcyankton.org, or on YouTube.